All right, non-contact feinting. So the first important thing is that the sword goes before the body. If I step in with a non-contact feint in my body at the same time, I die. Sword has to come first. Whether it's a thrust or a cut, same thing. If I come in with a thrust with my body, I die. So I need to make sure that the sword goes first, and only when he starts to react does the body come in. That's very important, because if I do this and he spazzes, I need to be able to lead, right? So the sword commits before the body, very important. The other thing is feints are essentially a decision tree. And decision trees show up in the manual. So the Zorn Ort play from Ringneck is a decision tree. He cuts at me, I overhowl. If he's soft, I stab him in the face. If he's a little weak, I'll end up and stab him. If he pushes a little harder, I chop to the other side. I can flow through that, and basically all of his decisions decide how he dies, right? So the kind of decision tree concept is very important. So the thrust to cut is just a decision tree, but we need to do things in the middle of our decision tree so that if they do something we don't like, or they misjudge the situation like intention or space, or we misjudge the intention, we stay safe. So one of the things that's really important is even if I extend with the sword, if I do something like this, where I come sword and then turn, right, again, it's not so good. So I need my first motion to be something that keeps me safe. So with this thrust to cut, what I want to do is I want to come in, see how I'm controlling a little bit. Because if Max is there, he's really got three options. Stand there and parry, spaz out and cut or stab at me, or back out, right? Those are basically the three options, right? It's all going to be some variation of that. Defend, counter, leave, right? So even if I come in with a thrust, if I'm not covering any line and he decides to hit me, it's still a loss, right? Maybe he should have defended, right? He should have defended because there was a threat. But he didn't, and I died, right? We doubled. This is why a lot of doubles happen. So I want to make sure that I come in with a threat, that if he counters, I've got a line, right? This is very important. And this is the same thing even for like cut counters. What's happening a lot of times, and this is why I wish Fox was here. Fox's little like wiggle wobble, what he does is he goes, huh, bang. But do you see how there's never a time where I'm really like covered, right? This is why when I emphasize a little zigzag, I talk about being crossed, and then chopping, because I need something to close that obvious oh shit line throughout my motion. Otherwise, we're never going to get to the end of the decision tree, because something chaotic is going to happen. So for the thrust to cut, that's why I was saying don't thrust center line, because maybe I get him, but maybe he hits me, right? Or I eat it in the hands or something. I want to cross, and that's why I want to go for his right eye. Because whether he cuts or thrusts at me, right, it doesn't matter what version he does, I want to have coverage, right? Very important. So lead with the sword, lead with the motion that keeps you covered against, I'm not really sure what's going on. Because if we rely on our opponent making good decisions, especially if you're newer, crazy shit happens, right? So that's very important. So I'm going to lead with the sword, and I'm going to do it in a way that covers. So now if he parries, that's fine. I'm safe. This is great. But I'm covered just in case, right? So from here, again, I don't want to just leave. Right? I want to stay covered here, right? And now I'm going to swing to where he came from. Meyer says most place people are most open is where they came from. So I'm going to go for this offline hips, which is very common. And when I do that, when he starts to move, I'm going to step out because I want to go away from where the sword is going to be. So this is another motion that's designed to keep me a little bit, because I could do it right in front of her. Okay. And maybe I can, but you see how the chances are higher I'm going to eat a double, right? So sword, stay safe, fade away from where their sword is going to be going, right? Very important. And we like to go past, we like to move with the hang of that. This is going to keep you safe when you're doing like non-contact feints, right? The other thing is, in a set of sparring, you can use these patterns to teach your opponent lessons, which you then punish them for. So this is something I worked really hard with you on Thursday, right? I landed a couple of these. I came in and I went, boom, pop, and I'm leaving, right? And you took a couple of those and you were like, screw that, I'm blocking those. He's not going to hit me with those anymore. And then what did I do? I came in here, I started this, and then I came back down onto the head because I had taught you a lesson, and then I punished you for learning the lesson. Does that make sense? And that's a good way, especially if you're not sure what the person's doing, you can do some kind of like fact finding to figure out what they're going to do. Because everybody has certain tendencies. We know Max, for example, tends to back up and want to be a counter shooter, right? And if you chase him and reach, he's going to catch you reaching. You have a tendency to counter fire without moving your feet, although you've gotten a lot better at that. But somebody like Fox, for example, that's all they do right now, because that's kind of where he just goes, oh shit, and he kind of counter swings. So you can teach them not to do that, but you need to be patient. So maybe if I'm fencing Max, I'm not sure, I'll give him a couple thrusts just to see what he's doing, and a couple looks, but see how I end up on this side of the sword. Always I'm thinking about how do I stay safe in case they spaz out on me, because I can't trust them to make the smart response, right? You can never guarantee the other person's being smart, especially with non-contact stuff. So I actually want us to practice this thrust to hip line attack because it's a nice, easy pattern that we all do. So the things are going to be, and you can even add layers to this. So you were pretty good at picking this up, and so what I started doing, the way out here, is I would let my point float, just so that this felt like a second intention. It's scarier, because people's second intention defensive motions tend to be bigger, right? They're always like, oh shit, right? The second one's always bigger. So part of this also is not expending energy or kind of the coilness of it, right? You want to be coiled. So if I go like 1, 2, do you see how I'm expending a lot of energy? And there's like out, and now I have to retract if I want to do the next thing. If I'm here and I just use a little body fake, I haven't actually expended any energy, right? And I'm still coiled. And so that's when this thing can happen. So it feels like a second intention because I set up one threat with positioning, and then I set up a second threat with motion, right? And this is a good way, against somebody like Max, who has a pretty clever defense. This is what I was talking about last week. If I come out to Max and I just use motion, he's probably going to block all of those, right? He's seen all that stuff before. So what I have to do is set up a threat with position, and if he did nothing, I wouldn't just reach out to do that because he's going to get me, right? I'm going to move until I can get him to start to respond. And as soon as I see that my position has provoked a motion from him, then I'm going to try to go up. Because that kind of gives me like an intention ahead, even though I didn't have to move, right? So if we think about this, we can think, show a threat with position, then show a threat with motion, leading with the sword, using a line that's going to keep us safe at these paths, then we're going to hit them where they came from, and we're going to be moving away from the sword while we do it. So that ends up feeling to Max like a 3-intention movement, even though we're really only doing 2 motions. But it puts us ahead in the fight. And that's really important with non-contact fight especially, because we have to convince him to do the correct thing, or it's not going to work, or we're going to double. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's what I want us to work on today, is this of course is not the only pattern we could do this with. I think it's just a really simple one to use. Any questions before we put hats back on and start drilling? Cool, okay, awesome. Would you push the button?